And that's when the community really sees that it's in there. The system meant to manage it has failed. These are not junk vehicles. They're high-value RVs owned by people who once had stability. Veterans, retirees, working families. Philadelphia is now ground zero for America's growing RV housing collapse. And if this is how one major city falls behind, imagine what happens when the rest start catching up, because what's happening here isn't just a Philadelphia story. It's a preview of what could be coming to your city next, and the numbers behind it reveal something far more alarming than anyone's ready to admit. The mathematics of displacement. The median rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Philadelphia right now is $1,650 per month. Not in Center City, not in the gentrified parts of Fishtown or Northern Liberties. That's the median across the entire city. The neighborhoods where people used to be able to afford to live, places like Kensington and Hunting Park and Frankfurt. Those same neighborhoods are now pushing rents above $15 rent for apartments that haven't been updated since 1985. Now let's talk about what people actually earn. The median hourly wage for workers in Philadelphia is $18.50. Sounds almost reasonable until you start doing the actual arithmetic. Work 40 hours a week at that wage, and you're bringing home $38,400 per year before taxes. After federal withholding, state taxes, Social Security, and Medicare get taken out, you're looking at about $29,000 in actual take-home pay. That's $2,416 per month hitting your account. Rent is $1,650. That leaves you with $766 for the entire month. Now add the other costs that aren't optional. Car insurance, because Philadelphia has terrible public transit coverage outside Center City. That's $135. Gas to get to work and back, probably $160. Phone bill because you need it for work, $75. Basic utilities that aren't included in rent, another $120. That's $490. You now have $276 left for the month for food, for medical care, for clothing, for car repairs, for anything unexpected that will definitely happen, because unexpected things always happen. If you're fortunate enough to own a vehicle, that $8,000 motorhome gets maybe 6 miles per gallon. Moving it costs a fortune in gas. The generator that provides electricity runs on propane. It costs $50 to refill and lasts maybe a week in winter when you need heat. The water pump breaks and the repair costs $300. The tires are dry rotted and dangerous, but replacing all 6 costs $1,200. You don't have. The roof leaks, and now there's black mold growing inside the walls. The heating system works intermittently, which means you're burning through propane, trying to stay warm while also running a space heater off a battery system that wasn't designed for that kind of load. The RV that seemed like a solution becomes another trap, except now you're stuck because you spent every dollar you had buying it. You can't afford to fix it properly. You can't afford to sell it and move back into an apartment because you still don't have first, last, and security deposit. You can't afford to abandon it because then you have nothing, so you stay in it. You park it wherever the city lets you park for 72 hours, and you try to survive while working full-time and hoping nothing else breaks. This is how Philadelphia turns working people into RV dwellers, not through personal failure, through mathematical inevitability. And the numbers get worse every single year while wages stay essentially frozen. The Philadelphia accelerators. Every city has housing problems right now. Every major metropolitan area has people priced out of the rental market. But Philadelphia's RV crisis has specific accelerators that make it different from what's happening in Denver or Los Angeles or Seattle. Understanding these factors explains why you're seeing more RVs on Kensington Avenue than you've ever seen before, and why that number keeps growing every month. First, geography. Philadelphia sits within easy driving distance of some of the densest RV markets on the East Coast. Pennsylvania Dutch Country is less than 90 minutes away. Down there, RV dealerships line the highways because Lancaster County has a huge camping tourism industry. When people sell used RVs, they sell them cheap. Second, industrial geography. Philadelphia has massive corridors of post-industrial land that never got redeveloped. The areas along Delaware Avenue near the port, the streets around old factory complexes in Kensington and Port Richmond, the zones under I-95 and along the freight rail lines. These spaces aren't residential neighborhoods. They're not commercial districts. They're just there. Empty lots with gravel and weeds, abandoned factory buildings with parking areas that nobody uses, streets where no residents live to complain about RVs parking overnight. This creates a network of spaces where people can park without immediate enforcement, not legally, not with permission, but practically, because the city doesn't prioritize sweeping industrial dead zones the way it sweeps residential streets. Third, winter. Philadelphia gets brutally cold. January temperatures regularly drop below 20 degrees. February brings ice storms. March delivers surprise blizzards. You cannot survive a Philadelphia winter in a tent. You cannot survive it sleeping in a sedan. You need enclosed space, you need heat, an RV, even a barely functional one provides that. Fourth, the opioid economy. Philadelphia has one of the worst opioid crises in America. Kensington is ground zero for fentanyl distribution on the East Coast. That crisis creates a secondary market in distressed assets. People who owned RVs and developed addiction issues sell them fast for cash. Someone who bought a motorhome for $40,000 5 years ago will sell it for $5,000 when they need money immediately. Those distressed sales create inventory for people who are housing insecure. It's a grim economic cycle, but it's real. The opioid crisis and the RV homelessness crisis aren't separate phenomena, they're interlinked. Fifth, policy paralysis. Philadelphia has been arguing about homelessness policy for years without implementing comprehensive solutions. The Kenney administration focused on clearing encampments without creating adequate shelter alternatives. The Parker administration inherited a system with no infrastructure for vehicle dwellers. There are no safe parking lots, no sanctioned areas for overnight RV parking, no public dump stations for waste tanks, no water filling stations, no designated streets where people can legally stay while working with case managers. The policy infrastructure doesn't exist because acknowledging it would require admitting the scale of the problem. 6. Enforcement patterns. Philadelphia Parking Authority targets specific neighborhoods and ignores others. They'll sweep RVs off residential streets in Graduate Hospital or Queen Village within 24 hours. But industrial areas along Aramingo Avenue or Hunting Park, those RVs stay for weeks until someone complains loudly enough. All of these factors compound. Someone gets priced out of housing in gentrifying Fishtown. They buy a distressed RV from a motivated seller in Lancaster. They park it in an industrial zone in Port Richmond, where enforcement is lax. They stay there until parking authority notices and issues citations. They move to a different industrial corridor. They repeat the pattern every 72 hours, and Philadelphia keeps growing the number of people caught in this cycle without building any infrastructure to help them exit it. Other cities chose differently. They built safe parking programs. They designated legal overnight zones. They funded case management. Philadelphia did none of those things. So the crisis accelerates while the city pretends it's dealing with individual bad actors instead of systemic failure. Subscribe now, because what's happening here could redefine housing. In America's Survival on Wheels, let's talk about what it actually means to live in a recreational vehicle in Philadelphia with no infrastructure to support you. Forget the van life aesthetic, forget the Instagram posts about freedom. This is about daily logistics that would break most people within a week. You're living in a 30-foot travel trailer parked on a side street in Kensington. Your fresh water tank holds 35 gallons. Your gray water tank, the one that collects sink and shower drainage, holds another 35. Your black water tank for the toilet holds 40 if you're extremely careful. That's maybe 5 days before you need to dump waste and refill water. Where do you do that in Philadelphia? The nearest RV dump station is at a campground 45 minutes outside the city. They charge $25 per dump. Sounds manageable until you factor in gas costs. Your pickup truck gets 14 miles per gallon. That's a 90-mile round trip. Almost 7 gallons of gas at $4 per gallon is $28. So you're paying $53 every 5 days just to deal with water and waste. That's $318 per month just for basic sanitation, which means most people don't do it legally. They dump gray water down storm drains at night. They use public bathrooms at gas stations and libraries and McDonald's exclusively. They avoid using the RV toilet entirely because dealing with black water is expensive and complicated. This creates public health issues the city ignores until they become impossible to ignore. Now let's talk about heat. It's January. Temperatures are dropping to 18 degrees at night. Your RV's furnace runs on propane. A standard 30-pound propane tank costs about $50 to fill. Running the furnace consistently through a cold night uses roughly 1 gallon of propane. A 30-pound tank holds about 7 gallons, so you're getting maybe a week of heat per tank if you keep the temperature barely tolerable instead of actually comfortable. That's $200 a month minimum just to not freeze. But wait, your furnace also needs a 12-volt battery system to operate the blower fan. That battery needs charging. If you're not running the engine regularly, the battery dies. So now you're also spending money on gas just to idle the truck and charge the battery so the furnace will function. Then there's mechanical failure. RVs are complex systems with plumbing, electrical, propane, and mechanical components. Things break constantly. Water pumps fail. Generators quit, tires go flat, brakes need replacement, windshields crack. Every failure costs money you don't have. and creates a crisis where you can't move the vehicle to comply with parking rules. If you can't move it, you get ticketed. If you get too many tickets, you get towed. If you get towed, you lose everything. The 72-hour rule means you're constantly moving. Sunday on A Street, Wednesday on B Street, Saturday on C Street. You can never establish stability. You can never build community. You can never access services that require consistent locations. You're perpetually in motion while simultaneously trying to maintain employment, which requires showing up at the same place consistently. The contradiction breaks people. Philadelphia has 4,000 residents living this reality right now. Zero infrastructure to support them. Zero services designed around their actual needs. Just enforcement that costs the city money and makes everything worse. But enforcement makes people feel like something's being done, even when it accomplishes absolutely nothing. The expensive theater of enforcement. Philadelphia has a plan for dealing with RV homelessness. Tickets, citations, sweeps, tows, enforcement. The plan costs millions of dollars every year. The plan houses exactly 0 people. The plan makes the problem worse while spending more money than it would cost to actually solve the crisis. Let's walk through how the expensive theater of enforcement actually operates and who benefits from keeping it in place. The parking authority issues citations for vehicles parked longer than 72 hours in one location. First offense is $50. Sounds reasonable until you realize that someone living paycheck to paycheck in an RV doesn't have $50. They can't pay the ticket, so it escalates. Second offense, $75. Third offense, $150. After that, warrants get issued for unpaid fines. Warrants mean suspended registration. Suspended registration means the vehicle is illegal to drive. Illegal to drive means you can't move it to comply with the 72-hour rule. Can't move it means more citations accumulate. More citations mean higher fines. Higher fines mean you definitely can't pay. Eventually, the pile of unpaid tickets triggers an impound order. Towing an RV costs between $1,200 and $2,000, depending on size and distance. The city pays that cost up front, then tries to collect from the vehicle owner, but the vehicle owner doesn't have $1,200. That's why they're living in the RV. They can't pay the impound fees. The RV sits in the impound lot accumulating storage charges. After 30 days, the city auctions it. Whatever amount the auction brings goes toward the fees and fines. The vehicle owner loses their home, their transportation, their belongings, everything. They end up on the street with nothing. The city just spent roughly $18,000 between towing, storage, and processing to destroy someone's housing. That same $18 could have paid for 3 months in a safe parking program with case management. It could have covered emergency rental assistance to prevent eviction in the first place. It could have funded vehicle repairs that would have kept someone mobile and working. Instead, it went to enforcement that made someone homeless and solved nothing. Meanwhile, cities that actually tried to solve vehicle homelessness instead of just displacing it spent less money and got better outcomes. San Diego's safe parking program costs about $4,200 per person annually. 87% of participants transition into permanent housing within a year. Portland's vehicle shelter system costs $5,300 per person, 91% retention rate, and 82% successful exits to housing. Seattle's master lease programs combined with vehicle navigation cost around $6,800 per person, but achieve permanent housing outcomes for 89% of participants. Philadelphia spends $11 million on enforcement that helps nobody. That same $11 million could fund a comprehensive safe parking program serving 2,600 people. That's more than half the current RV homeless population. With case management, with access to services, with realistic pathways back to permanent housing, the money exists, the expertise exists. What's missing is the political will to admit that enforcement doesn't work and never will. Because enforcement isn't designed to solve homelessness. Enforcement is designed to make homelessness less visible to people who don't want to see it. And Philadelphia keeps choosing expensive invisibility over cheaper solutions. That choice has consequences measured in human life. What could work right now? Let's talk about solutions, not theoretical ideas, not aspirational goals. Actual programs operating in real cities with documented success rates. Programs Philadelphia could replicate immediately if anyone decided to prioritize housing people over citing them. San Diego operates 6 safe parking lots across the city. The program is straightforward. Vehicle dwellers get a legal place to park overnight. They get access to bathrooms and security. They get assigned case managers who help navigate the path back into housing. Participants can stay as long as they're working toward their goals. No arbitrary time limits. No constant forced movement, just stability while rebuilding. The success rate is 87% of participants moving into permanent housing within 12 months. The annual cost per person is $4,200. Philadelphia could operate 5 similar lots tomorrow. The city owns sufficient underutilized land near industrial corridors. Local nonprofits have the case management expertise. The funding could come from redirecting a fraction of current enforcement spending. Los Angeles runs Safe Park LA, which goes beyond basic parking. On-site services include showers, laundry, mail access, legal assistance, mental health counseling, primary medical care. Participants work with housing navigators who help obtain identification documents, apply for benefits, search for apartments, complete lease applications. Seattle implemented master lease programs where the city and large nonprofits lease entire apartment buildings. They sublease individual units to people transitioning from homelessness. No credit checks, no background checks beyond sex offender registry, no requirement to prove income at 3 times rent, just a lease and a case manager. Participants pay 30% of their income toward rent regardless of amount. The program covers the difference. As income increases, participants take on more rent until they're paying market rate or transitioning to independent leases. People in master lease programs are 6 times more likely to maintain housing after 2 years compared to people going directly from streets into independent housing with no support. Third, install basic public infrastructure. Water filling stations at public works facilities. RV dump stations at a few strategic locations. Public restrooms open when people actually need them, before 7 in the morning and after 9 at night. These aren't luxuries. They're public health necessities. The cost would be minimal compared to current enforcement spending. Fourth, change zoning codes to allow safe parking operations in commercial and light industrial areas. Current regulations make it nearly impossible to legally operate vehicle shelter programs. That's a choice. It can be changed. Fifth, actually include vehicle homelessness in the city's housing plan. Philadelphia's current 5-year housing strategy mentions unsheltered populations generically. It never specifically addresses people living in vehicles. That invisibility is intentional. You can't solve problems you refuse to name. The city needs explicit goals, timelines, and accountability measures for reducing vehicle homelessness, not vague language about unsheltered populations. Specific plans for specific people. Other cities made different choices. They invested in infrastructure. They created legal pathways from vehicles into housing. They chose help over enforcement, and their vehicle homeless numbers dropped significantly. Philadelphia can do exactly the same thing. The question isn't capability, it's willingness. And willingness comes from pressure, from people refusing to accept the status quo, the choice Philadelphia faces. So here's the situation. Philadelphia has nearly 3,000 people living in recreational vehicles right now. Working people, retired people, families with children. They're not there because they failed. They're there because housing costs increased faster than wages and the basic math of survival broke down. They're parking on industrial streets, trying to stay invisible while accessing enough resources to keep working and keep hoping things improve. Meanwhile, the city spends $11 million annually on enforcement operations that hounds nobody, solve nothing, and often make situations worse. That's the current approach. It's expensive, it's ineffective, it's cruel, and it's completely unnecessary because we know exactly what works. Safe parking with case management, vehicle navigation programs with comprehensive services, master lease housing that removes barriers, policy reforms that stop criminalizing poverty, infrastructure investments that cost less than enforcement. These aren't experimental theories. They're proven programs with years of data showing they end vehicle homelessness for the vast majority of people who access them. Philadelphia has the resources. The city has underutilized land. It has nonprofit partners with expertise. It has an annual budget where $11 million currently goes to enforcement that could be redirected to programs that actually work. What Philadelphia doesn't have is the political will to choose solutions over theater, to choose housing people over hiding them, to choose acknowledging reality over maintaining comfortable denial. This isn't sustainable. It's not humane. It's completely preventable. Other cities proved it's preventable by actually preventing it. San Diego, Los Angeles, Seattle, Portland, even smaller cities like Eugene and Sacramento. They built safe parking infrastructure. They funded navigation programs. They changed policies that made things worse. And their vehicle homeless populations decreased while Philadelphia's keeps growing. The city can keep choosing enforcement, keep spending millions on tickets and tows and sweeps, keep pretending that making people move every 72 hours is somehow addressing the crisis instead of exacerbating it. Or Philadelphia can choose to actually solve this, build safe parking lots with services, designate legal overnight areas, install basic infrastructure, fund case management, change counterproductive policies, help people instead of punish them. The choice is that simple. But the choice only happens if people demand it. If voters ask city council representatives why Philadelphia doesn't have a safe parking program. If constituents ask mayors and housing officials why enforcement gets millions while services get nothing. If residents refuse to accept that thousands of neighbors sleeping in vehicles is just how things have to be, because silence protects the status quo, and the status quo is failing thousands of people every single night while spending taxpayer money to make their situations worse. This crisis is solvable. The solutions exist. The funding exists. The only thing missing is the decision to act. That decision starts with people like you refusing to look away, refusing to accept that this is normal or inevitable or unfixable, because it's none of those things. It's a policy choice, and policy choices can change. What's happening on these streets is bigger than one city. It's a symptom of something failing nationwide housing policy, accountability, and it's accelerating faster than anyone expected. If you care about where this country is headed, subscribe and stay with us, because this is only the beginning.